In the choking dust of a Normandy field on July 25, 1944, General Fritz Bayerlein stared at the sky as if it were the face of doom itself, whispering to his aides a truth that would haunt him forever. The earth opened up and spewed dirt and fire, swallowing his elite Panzer Lehr Division whole in a storm of American bombs that no German steel could withstand. 8:50 hours, and Bayerlein huddled amid the shattered remnants of his forward command post, a once sturdy farmhouse now reduced to jagged ruins near Marigny. The thunderous barrage had raged without mercy for 40 minutes straight, each blast sending tremors through the soil like the heartbeat of some colossal beast. Around him, Panther tanks smoldered in twisted heaps across the scarred meadows, their black smoke curling skyward in bitter defeat. This was no ordinary foe, no clash of tanks or bayonets that his men could meet head-on. Something invisible and unstoppable was erasing his command from existence, piece by merciless piece. He gripped his field glasses tighter, sweat stinging his eyes, powerless to halt the carnage, able only to endure and witness the unraveling of everything he had built. And in the hours ahead, amid the screams and silence, he would grasp a brutal revelation no academy lecture or battlefield drill could ever prepare a man for: the raw supremacy of an enemy's factories over the fury of any single fight. Dawn had broken with a deceptive promise that morning at 6:50 hours, as Bayerlein stepped from the shadowed doorway of his headquarters, his breath misting in the crisp air. For weeks, thick clouds had shielded his panzers from the Allied hunters above, but now those veils were parting, unveiling a blue expanse that carried a chill deeper than the wind. At 45, Bayerlein embodied the Wehrmacht's ideal commander, sharp-featured, resolute, adorned with the Knight's Cross, bearing oak leaves and swords for valor in the sands of North Africa, where he had served as chief of staff to the legendary Erwin Rommel. 3 grueling years on the Eastern Front had honed his instincts, from the lightning thrusts into Poland and France to the frozen hell of Russia, always guided by one unyielding creed: foresee the adversary's edge, then crush it with flawless timing and terrain mastery. Yet by this sweltering July in 1944, that creed felt like a relic from a vanished age. Rushed into Normandy as the armored fist of German reserves, his Panzer Lehr, the Wehrmacht's prized training vanguard that had schooled every other division in blitzkrieg precision, had been whittled down in a month of unrelenting siege. What rolled out from Chartres on June 7th with 160 tanks now limped on 93 serviceable machines. Fuel convoys that once hauled 350,000 liters of precious gasoline sputtered empty. Ammunition wagons stood barren. Workshop crews faltered without spare parts, their hands idle amid piles of broken tracks and shattered optics. Worst of all, the veterans, those iron-willed professionals who had forged Panzer Lehr into a legend, were being worn to ghosts by the Allies' endless tide of fire and steel. But whispers of hope stirred that day, fragile as morning fog. Operation Cobra, the Americans' desperate lunge from their cramped beachhead after 8 weeks of stalemate, was underway. The scheme was elegant in its audacity: encircle the breakout with a swift panzer riposte. Panzer Lehr's spearheads would hammer the Yankee right flank, bolstered by the Das Reich Division and other battered reserves. Strike true, move like shadows through the bocage, and they might carve into the enemy's throat, shattering the surge before it could breathe. Bayerlein, scarred by losses that clawed at his resolve, clung to that slim chance like a man to a lifeline. Then, at 8:30 hours, The Jagdbombers descended, a swarm of American P-47 Thunderbolts slicing in from the west, wave upon unyielding wave. 4 at first, then 8, swelling to 20. Then squadrons blurring into an endless horizon of silver wings and snarling props. Each juggernaut bristled with 8 5-inch rockets and up to 2,500 pounds of bombs slung beneath its belly. They plunged earthward in steep dives, engines howling like banshees, unleashing salvos that rippled across the sky, birthing shock waves you could feel in your bones from miles off. The ground buckled and groaned under the onslaught, ancient hedgerows, centuries old, exploding into splintered mist, oaks torn root from root as if by invisible giants. Dust pillars clawed 3,000 feet into the heavens, veiling the sun in a gritty shroud that choked lungs and blinded eyes. The very fields convulsed, as if the land itself rebelled against the fury raining down. Entreat, Bayerlein's radio tent, operators clawed at their sets, voices raw with terror amid bursts of static. Forward battalions vanished in the inferno, Panthers hurled skyward by near misses to land upside down like discarded toys. Foxhole infantry perished not from shrapnel, but from the blasts alone, organs ruptured by concussions from shells 50 meters distant. Bunkers caved in on huddled staffs, supply lorries shredded into fiery confetti. Even field hospitals vanished under avalanches of mud and stone. One young signaller, his transmission fracturing like glass, gasped into the ether. "Sir, 1st Battalion's leaders are all gone. About 27 Panthers wrecked beyond salvage, the rest hunkered in the hedges. Ammo haulers blaze unchecked, fuel dumps a total loss. Craters yawn 5 meters wide, stranding every vehicle. Urgent call for our fighters overhead." Another crackled through, a different voice laced with despair. "2nd Battalion's post is entombed, 80% strength erased. 40 Panthers confirmed as hulks in the vanguard. Just 3 can still prowl on their own." Bayerlein absorbed these dispatches in stony quiet, knowing no relief would come from above. The Luftwaffe had forsaken Normandy weeks prior, their cockpits cold and hangars hollow. He had scanned those same skies for a month, witnessing the eerie void where once Messerschmitts dueled for dominance, now filled only with the drone of foes unchallenged. Wires snapped like brittle bones. One Panzer Grenadier regiment, 200 souls strong at the barrage's onset, mustered just 16 rifle-bearers when the initial fury ebbed. A third of the division's trucks and tows simply evaporated. Medics lay interred in their tents. Wrench-turners slumped lifeless over engines. Ordnance bunkers erupted in geysers of flame, fireballs blooming kilometers wide. The fuel reservoirs became a seething inferno lake, devouring reserves in acrid billows. Bayerlein pieced it together amid the chaos, the pattern as clear as a bayonet's edge. His command was being methodically unmade, not outmaneuvered by cunning foes or overrun by foot soldiers, but pulverized from the ether by an armada beyond touch or reprisal. Those high-altitude fortresses droned at 30,000 feet, ghosts in the haze his flak crews strained to silhouette through the murk. A few raiders limped wounded, but none tumbled. The onslaught rolled on, 8 minutes of hellfire, 30 seconds of deceptive hush. Then the next armada thundering in, a machine of pure, pitiless rhythm. By 1100 hours, a merciful 20-minute lull descended, granting Bayerlein his first breath to tally the toll. He dispatched scouts on foot, threading through the haze to probe what fragments endured. Their tidings chilled deeper than any frost. The lead battalion, 900 fighters with 14 Panthers and 32 half-tracks, had dissolved into anarchy, 70% felled. Remnants roamed dazed, bereft of orders or will to hold. One courier reeled in, face caked in soot and crimson, signals gear pulverized, supply lines ghosts in the smoke. 2nd Battalion clings with 300 from 900, bunker half crushed. 13 minutes of water left, bellies empty. Forward panzers all slain hulks, 40 more verified lost. Workshops? Scrap and silence, no mending possible, no spares to summon. Every lead tank lay crippled or charred. The battalion chief perished entombed when a direct hit entombed his shelter. Wire teams fell rewiring paths doomed to rupture anew. Forge yards morphed to charnel pyres of metal and flesh. Magazine sights gaped as abyssal scars strewn with mangled iron. As Bayerlein wrestled these ghosts of reports, the skies darkened once more. Now came the behemoths, 371 B-17 flying fortresses, lumbering heavies unleashing their guts over 17.5 square kilometers in 90 merciless minutes. Each colossus bore 2,500 kilograms of death. The deluge equaled 240 kilograms of explosive force per square meter. A mathematical apocalypse. These were no precision strikes on bunkers or batteries. This was erasure of the world below, reshaping fields into moon-scarred voids. From his shattered perch, Bayerlein couldn't spy the full horror, but the ceaseless drone overhead painted it vivid. The Luftwaffe's ghost had long fled. 90 minutes. 0 interceptors rose to contest the throne. The firmament was America's alone. In that suspended instant, amid the roar that drowned thought, Bayerlein confronted the cold equation of aerial dominion. No feint, no flank, no genius gambit availed against it. Only dissolution awaited. No doctrine decoded this apocalypse. No redeployment repelled it. No rally reversed the tide of bombers gliding where panzer treads could never climb, where Wehrmacht honor buckled under tonnage. At 1400 hours, the tempest broke at last, yielding 90 minutes of our unbroken quiet after ceaseless cataclysm. Only moans of the wounded pierced the hush, crackle of dying fires, whisper of breeze through debris, faint growl of retreating engines far off. As the 7th Corps marshaled for the plunge, Bayerlein clambered into his scarred half-track, keying the radio anew for echoes from the front. Replies trickled in, each more damning than void. Division losses tally 2,500 souls. Tanks afield? 7. 7 Panthers, lone wolves strewn over 8 kilometers of ravaged line. From 93 at Cobra's dawn, now this skeletal handful. The Yankees surged at 1400 sharp, the instant the bombs fell mute. Their timetable had eyed 9:30, but the aerial symphony overstayed its cue. The thrust was stark. 3 infantry divisions and 2 armored brigades surging south over terrain, gouged to impassable ruin, yet where German cohesion had fractured to dust. What stood as fortified hedge lines mere hours prior now mimicked lunar desolation, craters 20 meters broad and 5 deep stippling the earth. Ancient groves erased, bocage pulverized to mulch, topsoil flayed and flung. Bayerlein's surviving cats pounced on the Yankee van, their long 75mm guns outranging and outpunching the Sherman swarms that led the charge. A Panthers KWK could pierce Sherman glacis at 2,200 meters. The foe's piece demanded 500 for parity on sloped hides. But such edges dissolved when treads seized in craters. Shells dwindled to whispers, fuel gauges gasped empty, and fresh Thunderbolt packs circled to strafe any glint of gray. From his vantage, Bayerlein tracked the advance through veils of haze. GIs crept with grim poise, craters their bulwarks, squads bounding in tight bounds, rifles weaving suppressive webs. Not all were battle-hardened. Many bore the wide-eyed pallor of fresh drafts, gear unmarred by mud. Yet they pressed because reserves loomed eternal, tanks upon tanks, footmen in endless files, and beyond, a colossus of forges churning forth the means to outlast any storm. Pockets of defiance flickered from Lehr's shards, survivors coalescing in ragged knots amid the wreckage. Desperate to stem the flood, Bayerlein loosed his last Panthers in a forlorn lunge at the spear tip. They barked at peak reach, 1,700 meters, felling a brace of Shermans in plumes of oily rage. But the horizon birthed more, columns unending. For each pyre, twins lumbered forth. American logistics outpaced destruction, feeding the beast faster than claws could rend. By twilight on July 25th, the breach yawned wide. 7th Corps claimed 5 kilometers through the pulverized crust. No grand cavalry sweep by blitzkrieg yardsticks, yet the German cordon, frail as it clung, splintered irreparably. Once cracked, no mortar mended it. The ledger of ruin spoke without pity. For Bayerlein, glassing his septet of Panthers duel endless foes through the pall, the figures etched an inexorable verdict. Germany had birthed some 6,000 Panthers across the war's span. Yet in July 1944 alone, Detroit's assembly halls and Chrysler's belts spat forth over 2,000 Shermans monthly. Each Yankee loss reborn in weeks from fresh steel in Michigan yards, Ohio plants, Pennsylvania rails. Each German mount a void no forge could fill, its birth lines crippled by Allied raids that shuttered bays come autumn, starved of ore and hands pressed to rifles. Panzer Lehr hemorrhaged 7 tanks daily in Normandy's grinder. At that clip, the Reich's Panther horde would starve in under 9 months of ceaseless fray. But no such marathon awaited. By August 1st, Lehr reeled rearward, gutted of offensive spine. Rigs scavenged for scraps. Survivors parceled to other ghosts as fodder. From 5,000 who marched from Chartres on June 7, 2,500 endured fit for fray. From 160 tanks that day, 0 prowled whole. Reborn on ledgers with green conscripts and cast-off hulls, sans upgraded plate, drilled in 6-week rushes, not half-year forges of lore, Lehr limped to war's close a shadow, its demonstration fire long quenched. Bayerlein knew this not in post-war haze or memoirs ink, but raw in the maelstrom, as bombs reaped his brotherhood and the elite that was vanished before his gaze. This insight struck, not delayed, but immediate, forged in the acrid reek of his half-wrecked lair. At 1400 hours that day, knee-deep in rubble's hush, he beheld modern war's core verity. Prowess in maneuver, drills etched in muscle, valor unbowed, ground seized with guile, all crumbled before an engine that could raise the same acre 100-fold and laugh at the cost. Tactics bent no such behemoth. They merely prolonged the kneel. The 4,200 tons of ordnance that scourged his ranks in 90 minutes transcended ledgers of shot and shell. It embodied a republic's forge heart, one that devoured setbacks and birthed abundance. The United States raised 100 mills to Germany's 1, schooled 1,000 aviators to each Teutonic wing, cracked 1,000,000 barrels of black gold daily, while the Reich squeezed 100,000. No mere contest of arms, this, no puzzle of ploy. This was systemic eclipse, webs of industry so boundless, so synced, so fecund, that no Gallic gallantry or Slavic steel availed to bridge the gulf. Cobra claimed no unique fall. The Reich toppled in Michigan smelters, Ohio rivet lines, Pennsylvania coal veins. It crumbled in Texas derricks months, perhaps years prior, as Yankee output soared unchecked, and Berlin's peaked, then plunged. There, with 7 iron steeds faltering, 2,500 brothers stilled, his banner in tatters, post a ruin, Bayerlein seized the absolute. No ploy pierced this veil, no flash of arms atoned, no cadre of aces or wonder weapons redressed the tide. Only attrition's slow grind, a ledger where rebuild outran wreck. Wehrmacht minds could scheme, shift, strike with peerless pluck. Futile against production's prose. Contemporary conflict crowns not the clash's crest, but the victor's arsenals, academies, wells, eons ere the opening volley. Cobra etched that cannon. Bayerlein lived it then, as his phalanx perished. He owned it utterly, etched indelible. Thanks for joining this chapter of World War II Chronicles. If this glimpse into the unmaking of a Panzer legend stirred you, hit that like button and subscribe for more unearthed tales from the war's shadowed edges. The human pulses behind the machines that changed our world. Drop your reflections in the comments. Where do you tune in from? What other unravelings of Axis would you have us chase next? Your voices fuel these journeys through time.